you know, a GT500, you've got so much torque at your command. I mean, you've got instant torque. You really don't need a super deep gear. In fact, I'd go the other way, not a deep gear, so that you don't smoke. You know, your wheels don't smoke every time you hit the gas. So I don't think that's, you know, I for supercharged cars I actually use kind of a lower ratio, not numerically, but instead of a 373, I'd go to a 355 for a supercharged car, just because if you got all that torque and you got a deep gear, you're going to spin the tires. And you know, if you're spinning, you ain't winning. So I mean, I wouldn't worry about that. But what I did is I kind of put together a little bit of a chart, and let's see if I can. If I tested this earlier and it worked, so let me see if I can do it again, and it works. Ah, there it is. Okay, this is something I put together. Now this top part. This is something I did where we're building David's car out on the West Coast. He has an S197 Mustang, but it's going to run AIX in NASA, and he really wanted to do something different. So I had Wagner Race Engines up in Wisconsin build a all aluminum 408. That's a 351 stroked out to 408, aluminum block, aluminum heads, everything. And it makes buckets of power. It's like 650 horsepower and almost that much in torque. And that's the whole. That's why I like, you know, for this application, why I like the Windsor motor, because you can just get so much torque out of it. And as far as weight and size, it's smaller than the Coyotes, and it weighs less or about the same. But it's the torque thing is like there's the old saying that horsepower sells engines, but torque wins races. So anyway, we're putting together, he's got a 9-inch in it, which means you can pull the hogshead out and change gears like pretty easily. And I put this chart together for him so he could figure out which rear end ratio. These are rear end ratios where we were gearing towards. Remember, I said you need a lot of torque. You don't need a deep gear. And the way that I gear race cars is, you know, the first thing I'm looking at is, you know, typically, fourth gear is a 1-to-1, and that's kind of like the gear we look at for top gear. Some tracks are really long tracks. You might need to drop into fifth. If that's the case, you have to have a transmission that's like a 0.8 to 1. Otherwise, you hit fifth and you go backwards. But the thing I look at for fourth gear, I want the car to be pretty much at red line at the end of the longest straightaway. So if at the end of the longest straightaway, if it's like 151 miles an hour, then we're going to want the 360 gear. So that's what I'm looking for. The next thing I look for in choosing the gear is where are we in the torque band coming off the turn before the longest straightaway? Because that's how we kind of gear the car, is you want to be right in the torque band pulling off of that last corner before the longest straightaway, and you want to top out that gear at red line at the end of that straightaway. That's going to give you maximum velocity. And once we get that one, then we'll go to what's the next longest straightaway, and we'll kind of do the math there. So that's how we end up choosing gears for race cars. And this is a chart that I put together for David. So when he's at the track, let's say he's got the 389 in there, and at the end of the straightaway, he's got to shift from fourth to fifth for maybe 100 yards or so. Well, in that case, we want to drop down to either the 370 or the 360. So he wouldn't have to make that fifth gear shift. Now, some super long tracks, you might have to do that, but I like to keep it, second, third, and fourth as far as the gears using on track. So anyway, so I came down, I put some numbers together for a Coyote, and this is kind of like the tires we use the most are around 26.5 inches tall. But I just want to show you the difference and what happens with a taller tire. So if this is a 26.5 inch tall tire, 373 gears, and we're looking at 1-to-1, which is either fourth in a like a Magnum XL or fifth in the stock transmission. And with the 26.5 inch tire, 145 miles an hour would be 6,800 RPMs basically. It's interesting. You go to a 1/2 inch taller tire, 27-inch tire, and around the same RPMs, you go up 3 miles an hour. So it's not a huge difference, but there is a difference. And looking at the like a 410 gear, we use most, and the Coyote cars will typically use, in the later cars, they use a 373 with a Magnum XL. That seems to work out really good. In like the earlier Cobras, use the Magnum XL with a 410. That seems to work out a little better there because they don't have quite as much torque. So anyway, so you say we have a 410, and at 132 miles an hour in 4th/5th gear is, again, 6,800 RPMs. You go to 27-inch tall tire and 6,800 RPMs, you're about 135. So it's, just a half-inch tire only makes a couple of mile-an-hour difference. Now on the 27.9, 27.9, that's a really tall tire. Same thing with the 373 at 6,800 RPMs, it's 153 miles an hour. So you can see what almost an inch taller tire does. And if you look at the 355, it's 160. So I mean, it's like choosing the right gear. If you've got that GT 500, I mean, I 19-inch tires. Well, here's the thing: the way I look at wheels and tires, 18-inch are for racing, because 90% of all race tires are 18-inch, and most of all sanctioning bodies require 18-inch tires. But for street and track, I like 19s, simply because you got a lot of options as far as tire choices. And to me, a 20-inch is for show. I mean, I don't like putting 20-inch wheels and tires on track. A bunch of different places you can get the formulas to calculate your speed versus tires and all that sort of thing. So I mean, it's not really magic, or I'll say it is magic, but it's not really magic. It's just a matter of math. Like I say, it's for all the cars that we do, I don't even worry about it. It's for the non-pure race cars, Coyotes will use a 373 with a Torsen. The 99 to 04 Cobras with the Magnum XL will typically use a 410 with a Torsen. So I just use pretty much those two gears, and I'm pretty happy with them. Speaking of gears, and going way, way, way back in 86, 87, when we were racing the Saleen cars in the SCCA Pro Endurance Series. Endurance racing is all about making laps. And if you're in the pits, you're not making laps. We did a back-to-back test. I think it may have been at Sears Point, which is now called Sonoma, where the cars came with a 308. So we actually did back-to-back testing with a 308 and a 355 to see if there was an advantage in going to a deeper gear. The result of that ended up being that as far as lap times were pretty similar. The 355 may have been just a tick quicker, but there was two things that influenced why I chose the 308 to race on. First of all, with the 355, they shifted a lot more. There was a lot more shifting involved with the 355. So a lot more shifting, not a whole bunch of improvement on lap time, but the big thing is the fuel economy went down. So, I mean, if you're doing endurance racing, like I say, if you're in the pits, you're not making laps. And if you're using more gas, you're going to make more pit stops, which means you're not making laps. So that's why I ended up sticking with the 308 gear, because it just made the most sense. Less shifting for the drivers, which meant in long races you don't get as tired, and we got better gas mileage. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that factor into racing. Choosing gears for racing is like I was saying about David's car, a lot different than for a street car or track car.